here with Nicole Lapin, author and entrepreneur, a boss as well. Totally a boss, and someone who's written about being a boss as well. What gave you the inspiration to do this?
You know, we don't learn this stuff in school, Kristen. We learn a whole bunch of random stuff, like the Pythagorean theorem. I think everybody here can remember it was like a squared, b squared. I don't really totally know what we need that for in our lives. How to dissect a frog. Not entirely sure either, but we don't learn how to have a business plan. We don't learn how to do our taxes. We don't learn how to make a budget. These would be much more important things that we could have learned in school, but we didn't. So I went to the school of hard knocks. I had to figure it out the hard way. I grew up in an immigrant household, first generation American. So when I realized that money and business is just a language like anything else, there was just no Rosetta Stone. I could join the conversation, and then I felt empowered to help others join it as well.
And you used to be a journalist as well, an anchor.
In my former life.
Yes, yes. And so making the transition, what was that experience like for you?
Well, I know I kind of want to take the papers from you right now and ask myself the questions. You know, I was so lucky to be in network news for more than a decade. I feel like such an old lady saying that. But I started really young. I started in my teens. I grew up in a broken home, so I had to start working really early on. And so I didn't have any connections. Like, I went to really small markets in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Lexington, Kentucky, and just had to, like, figure it out. And I reached my goal, which was, you know, to be that anchor woman on a network, at network news. And then I wanted to take the information that I learned and talk to that former self, that girl who was so clueless in this world, the girl who was smiling and nodding instead of joining basic money conversations, and talk to her. So that was my mission.
And how did you celebrate your first win with 2 books out now, and it sounds like a 3rd one on the way as well?
Oh, girl, I know. It sounds like my girlfriend who wrote 2 books at the same time and had 2 real babies. She was like, actually, the books were more difficult to birth than the babies because there was no epidural for the books. Mm-hmm. So I did not think I would have more than 1 book, for sure. Writing a book called Rich Bitch, like, it either crushes it or it fails miserably. Like, there's really no middle ground in there. And I would be the first person to sit here and tell you that it failed miserably, but it did not. It showed me that there was a lot of appetite for young women in particular to join the conversation of money. There was just sort of nobody talking in the way that you and we would talk like this if we were having drinks, right? And this is, I think, the conversation that we need to have about money. And so, yeah, they gave me another book and more books. I'm like, when did this happen? The Bitch series continues. No, I don't think the Bitch series will continue, but it's really awesome to see not only, I saw you during the initial book tour, but after, you know, girls started telling their friends, and that was what I was most proud of, that there became this je ne sais quoi thing that, you know, people just wanted to tell each other about it, and it's a pretty cool thing to do.
Definitely. And for role models along the way, is there anyone that helped you throughout the process directly or indirectly that you looked up to?
Oh, gosh. So many people in business. Sarah Blakely, she started Spanx. She's endorsed the books, been such a fan. I am also a customer. Thank you, Sarah, for your fabulous product. You know, a lot of women in the media. I was on there's no other station besides Cheddar, obviously, but there was a woman, Mika Brzezinski, who was really influential in helping me not only with the television career, but figuring out that you have to plan for your family life and your love life in the same way as you would plan for anything in business, and that it's not 2 conversations, it's 1 conversation. And then, you know, as far as mentors, people ask me all the time, like, is there one person like a Mika or a Sarah? And those women were a part of an amazing mosaic. Mm-hmm. But I actually talked to my dermatologist, and I think he's a mentor, or my doorman. And I think, you know, the idea of finding one mentor is a little bit confusing because you actually can learn from everybody. And I try to learn from everybody. Like, I talk to everybody possible. And I think that we can pick up, nuggets if we just stay present and, find a bunch of mentors beyond business and television that have really helped me.
Well, you seem so confident, and I think confidence for young women and men is so important. Have you always been this confident? How did you find your inner confidence?
Oh my gosh, definitely not. So when I started out, I wore maxi pads under my armpits because I was so sweaty and so scared and had such crippling imposter syndrome. And I think a lot of women in particular go through this, where we think we're going to be found out. Like, do they realize who I am, how old I am, or like that I maybe don't know all this stuff, and we second guess ourselves? And I went through that a lot when I started out in my career. I had this like weird anchor, like cadence thing going on, like no, 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 no. No, 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 no. And when you were talking about affair and then a murder, and I'm like, who am I? They wanted me to cut my hair and like have a bob or whatever. And if I enjoyed having a bob, that would have been one thing, but I did not, and that wasn't me. So I think it took me a while to become comfortable in my own skin. I think it takes people a while, generally speaking.
Well, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but in terms of what's on the horizon, it sounds like another book, sort of in the same genre, but maybe slightly different?
Yeah, so, gosh, there are actually a couple of books. I'm continuing the 3rd season of my show now. It's an entrepreneurial business competition show, consumer products. So, as long as folks want to continue to read stuff I write and watch stuff I produce and put out, I will keep doing it. But when they don't, I will die trying.
Well, and it sounds like planning in every part of your life is something that really you found, it seems like, does serve young people well, right?
I think so, in all aspects of your life. So when we talked about the idea of planning for family and planning for your career, it's one conversation. And I think having goals is so important in that direction of where you're going. It's like, hey, Kristen, we're going to a party in New York City. You're like, cool. Hopefully you say cool and you want to go with me. And then it's like, okay, but where? Oh, it's in the West Village. And you're like, no, what street is it on? So if you don't have direction, like, where are you going? And so for me, it was so important to come up with goals in all aspects of my life and then change them constantly. So I made goals, like I was talking to Mika back in the day. She was like, do you want to get married? I'm like, I thought you would never ask. Yes, absolutely, 100 times yes. And she said, no, really, do you want to get married? And I said, I don't know, I'm married to my career. And I had to come up with like a baby goal, date. Like go on one date. That was my year 1 goal. Yeah. Go on many dates was like my year 3 goal. And then I met a man who had a daughter, and like it changed the goals. And so I continued to iterate. And for me, it was important to come up with a cohesive narrative for what my life was going to be, so I could reverse engineer and figure out how to get the life I wanted.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Nicole Lapin, we're so happy to have you with us. Thank you again for joining us.
We're going to party?
I think that's next on the docket, right? It's like almost 5 o'clock here, so why not? Thank you.